The place of spreading rock. This far from home, perhaps any rock will do. Out of only a name I dreamed this place, and called it trees and stone and heart. Away from my wet birthland, lost in sun or snow, I summoned an old gale, exile, like me, who longed to his distant damp home, then blessed here with its name, Bownenbeg. But what can rock do? In his heart a tree grows slant, up, over, up. When the gale strains and he climbs this peak, his heart blows to foggy waters, other stone. He came for land, space, freedom. He found stiffened rivers, snow like stone, coast and armour of ice. No sun in the crevices that seep, only snow in the heart that grows to far rock, old trees, bent and stolen names. For my wound was to find this no mark of home, not Gaelic, but Wabanaki, the place of spreading water, where there is no water, words stolen from the river. Is there a word in Wabanaki for a trespass name, an ended dream? Shining ice, armoured in light, forest that groans with green, ants flickering black on bare stone. And home is always theft. This rock, a purloined wound, could not protect nor name their dream taken from a tongue that once was home.
Visiting the Boston land, Algonquin, Maine, 2022. 1. Arrival. It's late afternoon. Mount Agamenticus is in shadow. North Village Road. I roll up at a crawl from the south. I park the truck. I open my senses to whatever's here. The car door opens. My boots hit the ground. It quietly closes behind me. No path leads into the woods. I just walk in. Almost immediately, on a dry knoll by locusts and thick honeysuckle, a fragile wood-spindled kitchen chair rests position to look towards some stone foundation. The land around it is worn smooth from use, as time washes memory away. 2. I'm eating. A wind blows. Twigs click. There's a voice from the wooden chair. Is it a ghost? He says, I've been waiting a long time for someone. Is it you? Are you hunting for something? Do you need a guide? I'm Nahum Boston, husband of Emily, father of William. I died in 1925. My wife in 1907. My son in 39. Welcome to the Boston's family place. Follow me and look. I will share what I remember. Take what you must. I say, Nahum, I see your name means comforter. I will follow you. He leads me forward. Just down the path from the old barn, we see a family resting place. A wrought iron fenced graveyard, stone posts akimbo, yet standing strong against time. We pause to reckon large spreading oaks, both whites and reds, casting shade forlorn, drying pines spindly, stretching away in all directions. Here are unmarked headstones. By their presence we ponder souls, but with their names absent, their memory is all but gone. Mayhem goes quiet. He leads us past the large headstones of Emily and him, their names boldly etched. We see stones of others, Mehitabel, Darius, Sally, Daniel, all of them are Bostons. And then there's Lydia Hutchins, who was married, but whose husband's name has worn away with time. Her relationship to the other Bostons is unclear. Nahum casts around with outstretched arm and says, "Look at this forest, it's all grown back." They say there were giant chestnuts and pine. My father's father did the clearing. Axe, oxen, and slash fires for years. Yet now the forest is replaced, and again it whispers. He continues. When I was a boy, from these ledgy pastures, you could see Mount Agamenicus from the barn, out on the North Village Road, over the southwest, and the Tatnick Hills to the north. So few trees stood. Yet we see monumental sugar maples, shagbark hickories, basswoods, and of course oaks, holdovers from the pasture days. And Nahum tells us, and we see, the land they farmed with upland fingers and wide drainages all running down toward the Algonquin River. He remembers the cows grazing. It looks nothing like what he remembers, and we stand in a knoll with a plaintive look, and by a stone wall his father built with a family of stout Scotsmen. Look at the Algonquin River down there. The cows used to wallow in that summer water. My sister and me would have to help Dad bring them back to the barn for milking. We spent a lot of time down here. Spring nights we would catch wooden buckets full of silvery alewives, and during the day runs we'd get big salmon. You see, people had been doing the same thing for thousands of years. He wasn't in any hurry to get back to his chair. As the wind brushed us, he said something about Mehitabel and Emily and blueberry pie and William's appetite for it. And we walked slowly back to the road. When we passed giant, wind-worn sugar maple, he said, "We collected from these maples in the early spring to a white oak sap bucket, to on a sled pulled by oxen. In 1893, a runner went into a deep rut. The barrel, sled, and oxen went over, spilling everything. He pulled things together. There were many good runs that year. We made plenty of syrup. Ours was the local favorite." He shook his head and he smiled. And he said, "Nothing was easy, but this land gave us plenty, and we stayed with it. And here's where we rest." 3. Adieu. What can a ghost give me? This memory is but a hug of mist. I pick up a stone and I put it in my pocket. Something hard, tangible. I say, "What can I give a ghost?" He says, "Adieu will come in." I offer to buy him a lobster roll on Route 1 by the beach. He clearly has no taste for that, or wish to ever leave here.
A poem for the forest bathing children. The Japanese word for forest bathing is shinrin-yoku. It means absorbing the forest by being in it. At the sanctuary in fall, volunteers hide small painted pumpkins for children to find along the paths where birds visit small ponds to take their baths. The forest, you see, is a life-filled place where deer dawdle and foxes race. In winter, bears hibernate, sleep, and snore. People come in all seasons to forage and explore. Bats flutterfly silently, filling many needs. They feed on mosquitoes, pollinate plants, and disperse seeds. In summer, children crawl on their hands and knees to watch tiny bugs, then reach to climb on low-branched trees. Curious critters watch from hiding places. As one squirrel runs, another chases, up and down and around a hollow trunk. Inside it lives a docile skunk. It eats nuts and berries and nibbles mushrooms, the same foods eaten by possums and raccoons. Lynx and bobcats may venture here, but they're a very rare sight. They avoid places where people go, mostly come out at night. It is a miracle to share the forest with so many marvelous creatures. If we watch and learn their beautiful ways, they become our wildlife teachers.
I'm Bud Johnston, president of the Musselway Land Trust.
The Musselway Land Trust is a small conservancy of very active volunteers who operate in the Sanford area. We are known for two things. First, our community garden, which recently doubled in size to 54 beds. We have also included smaller beds for the children and grandchildren of those who garden, as well as 5 extra beds for the York County Cooperative Extensions program known as Kids Can Grow. The second thing we're known for is the involvement of students and the public in actual research projects and also habitat restoration projects.
And it is my special pleasure to introduce to you our poet, Dr. Michael Stanley. I've known Mike since he was a young man in elementary school with my grandsons, and I've watched him grow in stature and learning over the years. Today, he is a senior resident in neurology. In addition to this remarkable accomplishment, he has also written a number of poems and essays, and even a cartoon. He drew a cartoon and a children's book for Shriners Hospital for Children. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Michael Stanley.
Fishing Deering Pond by Michael P.H. Stanley. My singing bowls this John boat's hull. It sounds like pinging collection plates against the ground's excited gravel, late one Sunday morning as we travel over worn-out trails, tracking around a pine-trimmed pond's rail that sank into the bog a few years back. From the bank, a bullfrog scoffs, "Your line's still slack." My bobber tightly keeps corked, a pollen-patinaed, lightly lily-laced surface from cracking open and spilling out heaven's reflection to stain what flowering high-bush blueberries remain atop a lichen-crusted, craggy cropping. The plopping of a painted turtle pair startles the days out of me. Mosquito bites begin to itch. I twitch that bamboo's twine to pop the worm into the weeds. Unwilling to concede I'm skunked, I plunk a lure sure enough to hook that stump. My John boat bumps the rotting roots, echoing so far across Deering, that my father's 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 boyhood's hearing it and searching for storms along his clear horizon.
Note to the future. We don't have much time, so we hope you'll forgive the rough nature of this. There are things we want to know before you arrive, and we need to know them now. For instance, tell us about the ice. Has it melted yet? And if it has, how much new water is there? Enough that the creek near the house has flooded the basement, outswelled itself, and taken away all homes for mice? Are some of the cities lost? And what about the forest paths we used to walk? And are we so nervous still? And are the kids okay? And did we ever figure out how to fix the upstairs faucet? Tell us all you can about the clouds and how often it rains. Are wildfires worse? And what about the food? How good are bagels? And is the coffee strong? There's so much more, but we're running short. We won't be around when you get here, so we'd like to know how to leave things. And more than that, more than anything else, we need to know how best to love you.
At the start, it is all motion. When it is quiet in these woods, it is never really quiet in these woods. A person can learn what a babble is here. It's a constant. It's an all season. Under ice, over stones, through the crevices, can't stop, won't stop, presumes Scott. There's a certainty in that. Putting one foot in front of the other, knowing that at any point, from beginning bench to end bench, you can come to a halt, close your eyes, push your heels in, and hear a trickle become a rush, become a beckoning that pulls you ever forward. Tributary may be too strong of a word, but we all pay homage at some point along the path. The streams, our footfalls, the boulders the river has molded, the eagle we saw circling above that day, my friend and I, when we tumbled to stillness at the T in the path. Thank you.
The Maine coast is a world treasure worth caring for, and we're on a mission to keep it open, healthy, working, and beautiful. Maine Coast Heritage Trust is a nonprofit land conservation organization protecting and caring for vital coastal lands. Through the generosity of donors, MCHT has made an extraordinary impact since its founding in 1970. We've partnered with individuals, businesses, organizations, other land trusts, and communities all along the coast to conserve iconic islands, critical wildlife habitat, coastal watersheds, water access sites, downtown green spaces, and epic places for people to explore. We're focused on mitigating the impacts of climate change, protecting vulnerable plants and animals, expanding access to the coast, and serving coastal communities. We're committed to a vision of whole coastal Maine landscapes and islands that retain their inspiring beauty, thriving natural systems, and healthy communities. This is made possible through listening, collaboration, ongoing learning, and a strong conservation community across Maine. We're grateful to our incredible partners, whom we're constantly learning from and evolving with. Thank you to all who support a healthy, open, working, and beautiful Maine coast. And thank you also to Lise McLaughlin and all involved in the Writing the Land Maine project, including Ian Ramsey, whose poems about Whaleboat Island are a true inspiration.
Meditation on Whaleboat Island. Because we are all islands. Because status and money are mere wind to an island. Because islands are earth rising up through sea. Because an island is a window that is alive on all sides. Because islands are punctuation in the grammar of ocean. Because islands stand for the exactions of the planet, the brutal weathering beauty of exposure to the sky and sea. Because the island is as sweet as gooseberries, blackberries, and raspberries. Because two deer that swam out here grazed the grasses nervously, working their way down the sumpy shore. Because we breathe deeply away from electricity and people and motors. Because on the island we are immune to the taunts and fads of culture. Because the air is heavy with the musk of beach roses and spruce. Because the only roof above us is the sky, the only floor the sea. Because feet are wet and salty and faces are wind buffeted. Because an island is a piece of earth that has been transposed to a different key. Because stimulus means shifting tides and sun. Because we look at the sea through saltwater eyes. Because we come from the sea and perhaps we will return to it. Because we make an intertidal fire and then watch the rising water drink its heat. Because our bodies remember this language of water, sky, rock, kelp, fire, weather. Because the island speaks in histories of shell mounds and dug wells and crumbling foundations. Because we come here to become different people, and we do not know who we will become when we leave. Because an island is a beauty that rises, mysteriously, out of the water, like grace.
Hi, I'm Nick Yulo, Executive Director of Boothbay Region Land Trust in Midcoast, Maine. We serve the towns of Edgecombe, Boothbay, Boothbay Harbor, and Southport Island. Boothbay Region Land Trust is an essential and trusted community partner. For more than 40 years now, we have provided public access to nature preserves and hiking trails, outdoor recreation, environmental education, and resource conservation. With over 30 miles of hiking trails on 26 nature preserves, our lands include coastal woodlands, salt marshes, wetlands, fields, forests, ponds, mudflats, and islands. Community has always been at the heart of our work. We support the needs of our community through diverse initiatives from free educational programming to water quality monitoring, watershed conservation efforts, working waterfront access for lobstermen, a natural playground, universal access trails, and so much more. It is serving our community that guides our direction and focus. As we work to meet the challenges facing our community today and into the future, Boothbay Region Land Trust continues to carry out its mission to conserve for the public benefit the natural habitat, scenic beauty, and working land of the Boothbay region.
When the fir fell. When the fir fell, its crown billowing toward water, roots sprayed soil up the slope, covered now in needles that spiral down through the pitch pines. Underneath the roots, ledge lies exposed, first sunlight in a century. A flourish of mushrooms lines the splintered trunk. There are fish darting among the rotting remains of the crown, a ferment of algae brewing among the branches as the tide rises, falls, rises again. Maybe this is how the slow process of unlearning ourselves begins. Each component uprooted, fallen, simmered to a fertile decay. This is not pretty. It will smell of death even as life feeds upon it, vital and thriving. To enter this boneyard is to look with X-ray eyes beyond the fence lines of the old familiar, into the structure that we call mine and ours, and to leave it there, beside the fallen fir, swarming now with fish and their kin, to let it ferment into the nutrients of beginning anew. We must walk the old road with fresh eyes, sing the forgotten wind hymns with uncharted voices.
That farmhouse, this late winter orchard, these weathered apple trees. The old man in the parking lot tells me what his father once told him. Everything changes. You have to learn to flow with change. I move toward the woods with my daughter. We travel the gravel path along the shoreline, everything changing before our eyes and flowing.
Damruscove Requiem. A great barren geology exposes the star-thrown sky as night lowers onto the North Atlantic. A breeze stirs dwarfy, tough shrubs. Ocean. Calloused granite seems to breathe. A full moon rises over the hem of the sea and glitters, rippling in the brimming water. Shadows whisper across the old Coast Guard station. A muskrat slinks across the intertidal, sliding like tide. It blends into the moaning night, the haunted thumb of land. It disappears into the cold wind, rising moon, the tapestry of silhouettes, the booming thunge of the sea, and distant foghorns bellowing down the coast.
Oaks on the Coast by Julian Wise. Some oak leaves begin the new season in reds and oranges. It's springtime on Maine's coast. Everything is a bit behind bloom compared to the hills inland, but the oaks seem to be rather early bloomers, so the reds and oranges, sometimes speckled across vague greens or yellows, act as a surprise blast of color. On gray days, they provide a faint spark, faint but notable nonetheless. On sunny days they shine, illuminating the tree cover while the ground still holds mostly bare, while the bushes are just waking up. Sea grasses perking out of the sandy mud, spruces stoic as ever. It's a time of transition, but I just can't help noticing how those young oak leaves make this wild preserve about to bloom out of its slumber remind me so much of fall.
I am Catherine Hagopian Berry. I was the poet for Baldpate Preserve with Loon Echo Land Trust. And this is a poem that hopefully has listened to the Baldpate Preserve, talking with a lot of people about Baldpate Preserve. One of the things that distinguishes this hike is it's known as a very accessible mountain. And I was thrilled to learn that because this was one of the first poems that I came to on this experience of walking this land. And that's the way it felt to me too. So the poem is called Trailblazer. There are many ways up the mountain. Novice hikers should consider the Orange Loop, a gentle meander, hawks, birches, even wood ducks. But husband and daughter, eager sneakers, shining blazes, ready muscles stacked like cairns, say they'll take the harder trail. My father, still deciding, tight patent leather shoes. My father's eyes meet mine and part ways. Mountains, don't judge. Dollars stacked in your wallet like cairns, or empty-handed happiness, the wild loop of zero, nothing left to lose. A voice that blazes past us, he's for Pate Trail. Elder ducks honk frenzied warnings, smiling. My mother ducks her head around a chill of fear. Your father can't even see the blazes. Hazards. Old men shouldn't climb mountains. Too late to call him back, our path loops over a gentle rise. At the next cairn, we add a stone like you do for a grave. Cairns, when used for direction, are called ducks. Across the balding headland, they loop like the proud nose of a stubborn father. What the mountain is already showing you. At the end, blazes are unnecessary. Only maples blazoning endings like fruit on the altar of the cairn, like waves of color on the mountain, iridescent cries of mallard ducks and my father out of sight on the hardest loop of the most challenging hike. Just the narrow loop of our voices to remind him, follow blue blazes, keep pace, don't rush. But my father summits before all the others. We find him monument, a cairn. Calmly, he points the beak of the duck true north, writes in his journal bald pate mountain. You climbed a mountain, says the cairn. Autumn blazes as it cools, weep the ducks. Descending together, I loop arms with my father.
The joy of being in the outdoors in the Mahoosic region is hard to describe, and we keep finding more and more people who share that in common. Mahoosic Land Trust is a conservation organization founded in 1989. We're in 2 states, New Hampshire and Maine. In the Mahoosic region, we've conserved over 20,000 acres of land for the benefit of our communities. Our vision is that care and passion for the natural world inspire, engage, and sustain communities. We love connecting people to the land, discovering their passions, and if we can connect somebody as a volunteer on a trail or planting in our pollinator garden, that's how we're going to succeed in continuing to conserve the land, by having people fall in love with what we do and fall in love with the land.
Old Red Pines by Heather Hale Wheeler. How did you know that I needed only to be quiet long enough to let my grief spill out on the trail? How did you know to whisper back to me tender echoes of my pain, understood and then softened by the breeze? How many songs of loss have you taken into your bark and skyward, returning in its place a gentler song? How often have the inconsolable found a consolation here among your tall, straight trunks of ruddy brown?
Poems about Tumbledown Dick Mountain on the Bethel-Gilead line, because they function really as one poem. The first one is called Access. No summit, no view, no parking. 2 turnouts, 1 fire road. Trees hide the sudden steepness, wrap the mountain's girth, root in rock and blunt sharp stone. No easy trail up or into its name, a relic, casual colonial in-joke lost. The oldest urge to name and simplify a mountain, to use and take at will and think the land is ours. This mountain's name is pine and hemlock, maple, aspen, birch, and oak, deep pools and running water, warblers, flash and song. Crow and raven, nest and burrow, hidden fox and bear dens. In such a forest, secret, undisturbed, unnamed, easy to imagine and to hope, the eastern mountain lion, declared extinct, is not.
Hello and welcome to Androscoggin Land Trust. I'm Amy Dorval, their Executive Director. For over 30 years, Androscoggin Land Trust has worked hand in hand in these communities to conserve over 5,000 acres of significant lands. Connecting people to these treasured places is imperative to continued protection and stewardship. How wonderful is it that we have been privileged to receive the Writing the Land Project and its poets. Poets were paired with conserved lands, and that was such an unexpected and welcome gift for our land trust. Poetry is a natural medium for connecting people to places, and it invokes your senses and imagination. Reading these poems and listening to our poets, you'll be transported to these wonderful places in Maine. I visited these places, and the poems have most definitely heightened my sense of place. And I wonder about the poets and their thoughts, and I often dreamed of my own when I've been out there and after reading the poetry. We saw evidently this summer that by delving into poetry that we awakened some local poets. We held a poetry contest this summer where there were several entries, and these were all people that we had never met or interacted with, but we saw that they had this love for the land and a deep connection to the natural world. So we definitely see the power in this project, and that it definitely helps people to connect with places. So enjoy with you and for the land. Thank you. Androscoggin Land Trust.
Hi, my name is Lisa Hibble, and I was working on the land from the Androscoggin Land Trust, the Catherine M. Breton Preserve. And my poem that I'm going to read is called Breton Preserve. It's all right, Catherine. 10 turkeys greeted me far away from one of your 15 feeders on the lower planted field. A few frozen carrots flung up, but nothing like the native crop of winterberry that rings my seat in the woods. An old oak stump. The road at my back and the river in my face, though too far below the house to see it. But that's the way I came. I made a line for the river as the river carves a line into the banks. Less deep now than in glacial times, we know, because of all the air pockets at the base of those river trees. Animal homes maybe now, or just places where more leaves collect. A pair of ducks floated past, tugged by the wind. Crows and more crows, easily seen against the plainness of the harvested field. I returned via the gully stream, which sees more trash as the road nears. Last time, it was irregular earth tongue to identify in bright yellow. This time, 3 old tires, a green plastic bucket, 2 bottles wedged into the silty rich river soil that can look striated like polished stone from a distance. Someone is target shooting on this Sunday. Someone is walking the road in an orange jacket. I keep looking for the clearing in the woods where I felt distinctly the church would be, and thinking those Boy Scouts need to build a bridge. It's all right, Catherine. I may have walked more of your land than you did. I send you greetings across the bridge that's not been built. I'll come back in winter and call your birds. The mixed flock works together to find the seeds and extract them, the deer bending down to drink. It's all right, Catherine. I was hungry, but I brought a sandwich. It's all right, Catherine. I found the pile of stones the farmer cleared from the field. It's all right, Catherine. The taxes are paid. Only an acorn goes home in my pocket, unmissed in the lush mast that blankets the ground. It's all right, Catherine. Before I ascended the steep bank from the stream's coolness, I saw the green paradise of mosses. At the top of the deer path, my ankles turned back to straight, and the neighbor dog howled in the quiet after the shots. This is where the church would have been, though it's not the same place I saw before when I knew that. The point is, I came up from the river where there is no bridge, and the church was there, in the clearing. 1/3 of the old growth logged and become church. That's why I had to write you a letter. The heart is full when an intake of breath keeps the shoulders high. It's all right, Catherine. I saw a perfect white plain far above the river and a legion of crows traveling together.
This poem was created from the content of the management plan for the David Raincourt River Preserve, and the title of the poem is Management Plan. At the time of this writing, good access, reasonable cause, and equitable manner, the land for Maine's future. From downtown, follow Main Street, north, past, on the right, under a railroad bridge, 90-degree turn, follow tall pines, park, look. Surveys have been conducted. A certain lot or parcel of land bounded and described. Westerly and southwesterly of certain shore and riparian rights, Lake Auburn crystal ice, September 23rd, 1910, in the Book of Plans, 14 acres, more or less. Northerly along the easterly shore, rebar, a railroad spike, a point of curvature, the point of tangency, bow hunting must be allowed. Bald eagles nest north of Deer Rips, no payments are required. Meadow rue, sweet vernal grass, rose twisted stalk, black willow, black cherry, cinnamon fern. The eastern white pines are reaching the end of their lives, towering above a sense of smallness under the canopy. The center portion shared, the northeastern boundary shared, the southern shared, boundary to the west, the Androscoggin River. Seasonally strong current, the rush of big river rapids fills the forest, a distance to the point of beginning.
One, river water rushing over pale stones and deep human breaths in place. I take note of the human, the compulsion to claim, the compulsion to place a self, myself here, the compulsion to name the place in time of my arrival as if it matters. The human hand I place riverside, flat against a pale stone, steadying. This is the anchor, I tell myself, relieved, though perhaps I believe that I am. The real anchor, the human, has placed a self here, named and renamed and remained, in a jumble of moss-laden pale stones trundled halfway down a hillside, a stenciled sign, a declaration, pile low rocks, and remained between a pair of trees, a station for sitting, nail and hammer secured, a bench, a stenciled sign, an invitation, have a seat, and remained in the 11 planks of a footbridge, in all the markers signaling the human access and acquaintance. This is birch, and this is red maple, that is red oak, and a guide to the habits, dietary and otherwise, of the porcupine, the life cycle of the field mouse, the predation of the bald eagle, a guide to the foot-pounded path, a guide to the color-flagged trail marking the falls, a place where the river does something more impressive then simply plunge itself infinitely forward, its constant state, constant changing, moment to moment, a place, named for what these pale stones can make a river do. 2. Pale stones, slabbed and scattered, set down with the resolve of millennia, laid here by the will of earth's wise body. Pale stones, over which a river hurtles into the gravity of a subtle cascade. Pale stones, over which a river drapes a veil, darkening them into water's wet shade. Pale stones, a river and a human, existing by chance here for a moment, here. By happenstance I find myself here. Which of us is the anchor? I ask these stones, I ask the river, as I capture and claim images of them, as I capture, as I claim, as I walk away, this impulse. Is it in my blood, human that I am, my blood, laced with settler, blood draping a veil over pale stones, darkening their faces, pale stones, once barrier, once obstacle, now smoothed into a type of submission, slowly becoming silt in my veins. 3. It's been said before, from the desert, in which rivers unwind themselves underneath the earth. I said it a decade ago, said it from the dry desert, said sometimes the changes in a river's course are scars. And now, so far from the desert, from here, where water manifests each season, changing, and changes the saturated earth, where the river goes through and throughout, where lush layers of forest nestle against its banks, where the river falls infinitely upon itself, where a name is not what I call myself, it is what and who I am, where a name for this place and others falls short of resemblance, of reckoning. Sometimes the changes to a river's course are a collection of scars, still true, and sometimes the changes to a river's course are a collection of pale stones, slowly becoming silt.
Hi, I'm Meg Weston, and the land trust that I was matched with was the Androscoggin Land Trust and a pond called the Hooper Pond Preserve. And this poem is part of a sequence, the Hooper Pond sequence, with an epigraph. To see takes time, just like to make a friend takes time. Georgia O'Keeffe. 1. What we don't see. It's easy to pass by this bog, the beaver dam, the stream, the fen, a watershed that goes mostly unseen. By humans, anyway. The rest of life teeming at the water's edge. Bald eagle shadow scalds unrippled water. A great blue heron steals the silence of shoreline grasses. Turkey vultures circle overhead, watching us for error blundering into their dominion. A kingfisher on a barren branch, immobile till a fish swims past, and he dives, disrupting water's silken shell. Who sees this life of skies, of dragonflies, aquatic realms, discovers parasitic powers of pitcher plants, sundew, and bladderwort, is free to drift through pickerel weed, inhale the syrup scent of Nymphaea odorata, watch clouds reflected among lily pads. Who sees the ram's head orchid, its reddish vein-lined labellum, a lady slipper that grows nowhere but here? Virginia chain ferns defy their name and originate here, on this pond in Maine. Now in August, blue-bodied dragonflies stop time. Who sees the bees on button bushes, tiny rose hips, wild cranberries, and swamp holly grow among soft larch trees still green before their needles shed? Matted weeds extend from shore, weave surface tapestries, hide the bog, become a forest. Who sees the future in these crystal waters, spectral time that promises new life above, below, beyond? It takes time to make a friend of place, to recognize new mud on beaver dams.
Greetings from the beautiful Lakes region of central Maine. Thank you for this opportunity to meet you. My name is Teresa Kirchner, and I'm the Executive Director of the Kennebec Land Trust. KLT's mission is focused on protecting the natural resources that contribute to the ecological, social, and economic well-being of our communities. Next year, we will be celebrating our 35th anniversary, and our members and supporters have so much to be proud of. Since our founding in 1988, we have protected more than 7,500 acres in our 21-town service region and have constructed 60 miles of trails for everyone to enjoy. Each month, we offer conservation and outdoor recreation programs so that everyone can enjoy the beauty of the natural world close to home. Statewide, with 5 other local woodworks partners, we support forest land conservation and forest-based economies. Thank you to our poets and Lise McLaughlin for featuring the diversity and beauty of KLT's Got Pasture, Davidson, and Eastern River Preserves, and the Curtis Homestead in Writing the Land, Maine.
The March wind blew yellow wisps of birch bark like tiny Tibetan prayer flags. I offered prayers to all beings. There was a call and response of chickadees singing their spring song and ravens sounding mating calls. The ice was singing subterranean notes that ascended into star frequency. My wife and I placed our ears on the ice and heard symphonies and traveled to the clash and bang after the Big Bang when stars sang creation. Looking to the forest, we watched ancestors move with the wind. Whales turned their attentive ears to the singing ice of lakes and rivers. As the quarter turned around the sun, woke moss and lichen from winter's sleep. Framed by melting snow, seeds opening beneath pine needles and soil. Like the chickadees and ravens, whales sing, call in response to stars, to inform of singing ice and spring. The stars smile. We left Gott Preserve, still hearing the song of the ice. At night I dreamed of whale riding the galaxy to the soundtrack heard on our hike. Ancestors greeted the whale and I with solar winds that smelled of sage and sweetgrass.
Crouched on ice at fen's edge, I see this pond as if with first eyes. Uncanny pyramid of sticks and evergreens rise above cracked ice and blue rivulets of thawing water. Beaver lodge hemmed in by winter's ice. Strange weather. Sudden burst of heat in late winter. Spires of desiccated oaks and maples pierce the pond's frozen crust. Along each edge, ragged cattails, sheaves of dried grass, augurs of an epic of loss, forest to fen after the waters rose. News from afar blights my thoughts. A rising sorrow from 1,000 griefs thickens my speech, turns words clumsy on my tongue. After destruction, after the onslaught of so much death, what is the value of life? In the forest, woodpeckers mark hunger by splintering hearts of wood on white-capped ground. Around the trunk of trees, wells of warmth melt snowpack. Mushrooms sprout like elfin footholes from the bark of a dying birch. Wind clacks branches of aspen and oak, rattles golden beech leaves, caresses curls of paper birch bark, as if thumbing pages of an ancient book to read thoughts from a wider mind than mine. What will I sacrifice for love of this world? What work of human hands, brains, and backs equals the effort of this small clan of beavers, this diligent posse of water workers, creators of this refuge in a hostile world? Driven to extirpation by human greed, they have returned to recreate this fen. Still, I can't ignore the change. Dark nests of sticks abandoned in trees as decay renders trunks too fragile to hold the weight of eggs and chicks. Silt will shallow the pond, a threat to the safety of its water keepers. In time, even this fen will drain and dry. I fear I will only live to see loss, and not the great renewal. Perhaps I must discover a new mind, to imagine within the womb of lodge a mother licking loamy afterbirth from wet skulls of newborn kits. I must imagine a spring rainfall. I must imagine, too, roots of tooth-marked trees reinvigorated, fresh shoots bursting through dirt. I must imagine spark of life hidden beneath brown carpets of fallen leaves, waiting, patiently waiting on the light, on water fed by this pond, its aquifer replenished by self-same water that killed an older generation. I must imagine sleeping frogs and dragonflies, larvae buried in sediment far, far below these silencing tongues of ice. I must believe what is coming is already seeded.
Curtis Homestead. Solitude is thick as limbs on untended apple trees. No dog or friend beside me. Maples lean into broken conifers, sheets of bark falling after the bore of woodpeckers. a tapped code. The history of old-growth forests cleared to field becoming forest once again. Like my own pale arms, branches shiver. We're small in the outdoor world of things. I follow a trail that dips toward a blueberry bog, sense a final melt of snow and shade. Wish that I could soak into the peat. The tattoo of an oak is on my shoulder. Doves shudder in my chest. Through this forest maze, the stone walls of a farm mark nothing but the fallen trees that crushed them. 1. Wearing yak tracks, I crush spring snows at Curtis Homestead. The American beach reminds me, you may hold on through winter. Shimmery beach leaves, a dry murmur, like goldfinch hung by threads. Feathers sing from the silver branches. I also shake in wind. When buds sprout, like small cigars, last year will finally fall. 2. There's a phrase from these parts, you're from away. It means you've come from nowhere, just passing through, and if your bloodline splits 100 cord of hardwood into heat, unborn grandchildren can call this place their home while you are growing on a hill. After learning poachers take hawk nestlings, I'm calling for the goshawk, the silver solar flare of her avian eye, the angle of a furrowed brow, tincture of her ermine breast. I've been told to listen for her kill, 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 to move away from nests, wave dead branches overhead when she appears. I've reached the edge, cut through swale hay, a stand of hemlock in the distance. I long to feel the cut of a hooked beak, dream the open buttons on red flannel at my throat, an airborne spread of feather, the plunge of wings, her coronation coat.
The Wildness Next Door by Megan Buchanan for the Kennebec Land Trust Eastern River Preserve. 1. The generosity of trees, a love letter of lichen, the stability of roots, the gentle flags of the white pine, the wildness next door, the wildness inside of us. 2. I ask the land, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to say on your behalf? Shelter, refuge, peace, horizontal, vertical, diagonal, feathering blue-green lichen, narrow, gentle trail, gentle, gentleness, renewal, no sense of peril, green water, necessary wetland, branching, reaching, budding, and folding, leaning, letting go, loosening, decomposing, tangling, stillness, songs, thorns, needles, burls. 3. Here in the window between mittens and mosquitoes, warmth.
Be chill, begin. For some, the land begins in the parking lot, a literal zone between street and conservation. Leave your car behind. Ahead, remember your body, made for locomotion. Your feet contain memories of grass and beechnut. Leave your phone behind. Follow the path, well marked with deer hieroglyphics that meander to the summit. Follow your inner compass, like the fledgling cedar waxwings that sing as you climb. Smell the air, crisp with sea and juniper. Rest on a bench, carved with names of others who hiked this trail, paused at this point, breathed this view of blueberries and bay. Inhale. Elevation plucks the strings of our senses. At the summit sits a stone lodge to shelter climbers, to seal off wind, mist. Stay outside. Sit on a ledge, warmed in the sun for millennia. The land is not ours, but this moment is yours alone.
Discovery in Belfast, Maine by Natalie Amata. Every time I have come upon a body of water, I have felt something inside me try to leap out. For a while, I believed it was my burdened heart. Then I guessed my samsaric mind. Now I think the part of me that does all this aching is the water making up my body, standing eye to eye with the Pasaga Sawakag. I realize it's always been a matter of recognition. The water inside, seeking its kin on the out, wanting to join it there.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm a conservation technician, and today I'm here to talk to you about Downey Salmon Federation. I'm here at our Columbia Falls facility, right on the mouth of the Pleasant River. See the falls behind me? At Downey Salmon Federation, our mission is to conserve wild Atlantic salmon, other sea-run fish, and their habitats. Based in Washington County, we work towards restoring a viable recreational salmon fishery while protecting scenic and ecological resources in the area. DSS Land Trust plays a crucial role in seeing our mission through, conserving over 6,000 acres of riparian habitat, vernal pools, wetlands, and salt marsh. We encourage the community to interact with the land we protect, whether it's hiking, camping, fishing, boating, or birding. There's something for everyone across our many preserves open to the public. Partnering with local landowners and other organizations, DSF has permanently protected over 45 miles of river and stream where the last of America's endangered Atlantic salmon and other sea-run fish still breed.
Columbia Falls. Like an ancient castle lost on a loch, there the pleasant meets the tide. A defunct fish ladder and a great dump of granite blocks thwarts waves beside an eroding degenerative power station. And for boys, now men, balance among the remnants remains a dangerous ration. From the bridge above, a safer watch for smelt beckons as waters gush on tidal flats increasingly hidden beneath the cold rush of Greenland melt. Will tomorrows render yesterdays ever again? Better to push upstream to a quiet tributary, like the grills, even if they'll not return. Find a rise and cast about like an angel stripped of wings, grounded to the autumn floor. How does one stand vested to experience where the flitting of an eyelash is an epoch, where the micron of a micron measures the present? Faced with such lineage, an albatross chained around the neck, How can one not cave into himself, like a slow collapse of folding chair, back down to a barely remembered dawn, and the even more unknowable black hole that is the future? Does it hold a heartbeat? The scourge of our species is, despite self-laceration, we cannot help but rise again into the shuttered sunshine, lean heavy on our walking sticks, and trudge through the yellow staghorn, the upright forest, between the glistening Caesar's amanita until we reach the bank of that tributary. Look down, where clean, yellow-filtered clovings along the bottom of this silently moving brook give solace to the grieving.
Nod down, wasp-waisted, 2.5-foot trunk on a 6-inch pedestal. Our guide has a bet with a colleague on when the tree will fall. Not where. It will fall in the river. Beavers know their business. There it will lie, disrupting the current, and the beavers will feed on its twigs at their leisure. Elvers, swimming upstream in the spring to spawn, will navigate around it. A big trout will lurk beneath the trunk, trout memory whispering him to wait for nymphs drifting with the current, Elvers swimming against it. Here, in this protected bend of river, land and water have dominion. I will bring my grandson here when he is angry and afraid in the wake of his parents' turbulent divorce. Here, no human will disrupt the flow.
Hunker is a lifestyle. The forest doesn't care about the things I have or have not done. It simply gets on with life. I wish I could have gotten on with my life with you in it. I remember driving to Lewiston with Mom, who always took the back way on Route 133. Mom banking right and slowing some around that dipping sharp curve. I looked up the driveway at that large yellow house with an old barn and milk cows and asked who lived there. She said she didn't know. I had that feeling. 4 years later, you and me, in your '59 soft-top Jeep, jumbled up the drive. We were good while we lasted, when you were alive. These ravens caw and cluck through the ash, stand and dive out the Milky Way River, pulling sunset across the surface, like dragging a pool cover for the ritual end of summer closing, unfurling a blanket of flower-pressed living.
Hello, my name is Colin Brown. I'm the Executive Director for the Down East Coastal Conservancy, based here in Washington County, Maine. We are here, Reversing Falls Preserve, in the heart of Copscook Bay, a stunning rich ecosystem protected by Down East Coastal Conservancy and area partners. Down East Coastal Conservancy conserves essential ecological habitats, engages the local community, and fosters an environment where wildlife and people thrive in coastal Washington County, Maine. Down East Coastal Conservancy creates meaningful opportunities for people to interact with the natural world and connects people to the ecological, cultural, and historic values of our lands and waters through educational and recreational opportunities. The Passamaquoddy people have cared for this land since time immemorial. we too strive to protect these special places for all those who come after us.
Reversing falls. Slack water, slack water. Slack water turns. A sip turns slack water, a slosh at the lip. Slack water turns. As water changes its mind, moon-mad, diurnal, picking up near resonance, the tide from the Gulf of Maine, Bay of Fundy, the broad reach of the North Atlantic. Half a cubic kilometer entering each flood, emptying each ebb, comparable to the mean outflow of the Mississippi River in the same amount of time. Twice a day, the churn and push, the bay system an intricate cup filling with nutrient-rich soup, freshened by the outflow from Denny's and Pennamequan rivers, feeding and feeding scallops, mussels, clams, and urchins, ladling the news from the wide world on its crooked way. Slack water gives way to confusion. Falls Island muscling the water aside, turning the tide, turning the flow around the island, allowing a bit to flow through the gap, caroming off the channel between Mahar Point and the island, pouring over the rocky ledges of Cobscook Falls, the space between lip and plunge a chaste kiss, the water filling the inner bay, filling minute by minute, hour by hour. The long pour settles, the phytoplankton and macroalgal detritus feeds the benthic community. The long pour settles to brief stasis. Slack water turns a slosh at the lip, heads back to sea.